They say America has heard every horror story there is, but none of them were prepared for this. Because this isn't about a haunted house, a cursed object, or some legend passed down through whispers. This is about a demon that didn't just appear in the dark. It spoke my name with a voice I've never heard, yet somehow recognized. From that moment on, every shadow felt like it was watching me. Every night felt like it was waiting for me. And the terrifying part, it didn't want my soul. It wanted something far more personal. It happened on a night so painfully ordinary that, looking back, I still wonder why the universe chose that moment. Nothing felt strange. Nothing felt wrong. The world was quiet in a way that usually comforts me. No traffic outside, no dripping faucets, no humming electronics. Just the soft, constant stillness of a house settling into sleep. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how unusually calm. If I had known what that calm meant, I would have left the house entirely. I was lying on my bed, scrolling through meaningless updates on my phone. The screen's glow was the only source of light, washing the room in that pale, bluish haze that makes everything look slightly unreal. My eyelids were heavy, not from exhaustion, but from that slow drift into the comfortable mental numbness that comes at the end of a long day. I wasn't alert. I wasn't guarded. I wasn't ready for anything. Then the air changed. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden gust. No shaking window. Just a subtle shift, a barely. Their disturbance you wouldn't notice unless you were completely still, like I was. The room grew colder in a way that didn't make sense. Not the kind of cold that creeps in from outside. This felt internal, like the air around me held its breath. Something tightened in my chest before I even understood why. And then it happened. My name, whispered. Not loud, not harsh, not even eerie at first. Just soft, deliberate. The type of whisper someone uses when they don't want to wake the house. It brushed the back of my right ear gently, like a breath so close I should have felt the warmth of it. But there was no warmth, only cold. I froze, physically, mentally, completely. My body reacted before my mind understood. Every muscle locked as though something enormous had grabbed my spine. My vision focused on nothing. My breathing halted mid-inhale. I didn't even drop my phone. I just stopped existing for a moment. And in that terrible, suspended silence, I realized the whisper hadn't come from behind me. It hadn't come from anywhere in the room. It felt like it had originated inside my skull, expanding outward, like the sound knew the shape of my mind better than I did. It didn't echo off the walls. It didn't bounce around the room. It pulsed through me. My first thought wasn't, someone's here. It was, horrifyingly, someone knows me. The whisper didn't repeat itself. It came once, clean and confident, as if the speaker knew it didn't have to try again. It knew it had my attention. And God, it did. Every logical explanation fired through my head in a frantic surge. Wind, a memory resurfacing, some bizarre auditory hallucination. But none of them fit. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't a fragment from a dream. It wasn't the fading echo of someone I knew. It sounded intentional, designed, precise. And the strangest part, it sounded familiar. Not because I knew the voice, but because the tone carried something intimate. As if whoever whispered my name had spoken it for years, molded it with their tongue, memorized every syllable. That familiarity wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. My heart started racing so fast I could hear it in my ears, loud and uneven. My hands trembled, the phone screen blurring as my fingers twitched. I wanted to move, to sit up, to turn on the lights, but I couldn't. My body was locked, frozen between instinct and fear. I tried swallowing, but even that was difficult. The room didn't change. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. But I felt watched. Not the vague, paranoid kind of watching. This felt targeted, focused, sharp. Like a pair of unseen eyes narrowed on me, studying the way my pulse jumped beneath my skin. I didn't know how, but I could sense a presence behind the silence. Something patient. Something ancient. Something that hadn't come to frighten me, but to announce itself. The whisper, quick as it was, left a lingering sensation in the air. A hum, almost. Not a sound, but a vibration like the walls remembered it. The air felt heavier, pressing lightly on my shoulders, settling into the mattress beneath me. Minutes passed before I could finally move. My first action was to sit up and flick on the lamp. The sudden light burned my eyes, but I didn't care. I scanned every inch of the room, the corners, the wardrobe, the hallway just beyond the open door. I looked for shadows that didn't belong. Nothing was there. But the absence of anything made it worse. Because the moment the light filled the room, an instinctive realization struck me. The whisper hadn't needed darkness to exist. It didn't need shadows or creaking floors or flickering bulbs. It didn't belong to the room at all. It belonged to me. Even after I got up, checked every lock twice, and walked through the house more times than I could count, the certainty remained lodged deep in my gut. Whatever that whisper came from, it wasn't outside trying to get in. It was already inside, watching, waiting, learning. And it had started with my name. The second time it spoke, the fear didn't hit me the same way. It didn't feel like a jump, scare moment, or the sudden terror of hearing something impossible. It was worse than that. It was slow, creeping dread, the kind that unfolds inside you like a cold hand sliding beneath your ribs. Because this time, the voice didn't sound strange. It sounded familiar. It happened 2 nights after the first whisper. I had convinced myself I'd imagined it. Stress, sleep deprivation, the mind twisting shadows into shapes. Humans are good at making the unexplainable feel explainable, even if it requires lying to ourselves. And I desperately wanted that first whisper to be a lie. I was in the kitchen washing a glass. The water was warm, the room brightly lit, the kind of environment where nothing supernatural is supposed to exist. My nerves had settled. My heartbeat felt normal again. For a moment, I even believed my life had returned to normal. Then the air went still. I recognized it instantly, this unnatural pause in the atmosphere, like the house was inhaling silently behind me. The same tightness in my chest returned, a warning my body understood before my mind did. The running water felt distant, muffled, as if sound had pulled away from me, and then my name drifted across the room in a voice I hadn't heard in years. Not just any voice, their voice. Someone I had once trusted so deeply that even a single memory of them could unravel me. Someone whose tone I knew down to every shift, every softness, every unspoken emotion tucked between syllables. The voice was perfect, not close, not distorted, perfect. The glass slipped from my fingers and shattered in the sink, but I barely heard it. My entire body froze the moment that voice wrapped around my name. It wasn't the whisper from before. This was calm, familiar, spoken in the exact tone they used to use when they were trying to get my attention gently. I spun around so fast I felt pain shoot up my neck. But no one was there. The kitchen was empty. The hall was empty. The house was still. But the voice kept replaying in my head long after the sound faded, each repetition twisting deeper into me. It wasn't simply mimicking someone from my past. It had studied them. It had understood the emotional weight their voice carried. The inflection was too precise, too intentional. The demon hadn't just learned how to say my name. It had learned who to say it as. My heart thudded painfully, my breathing shallow. I clutched the edge of the counter to keep myself steady. For a moment, a small, fragile part of me wanted to believe it actually was them. Memory is a dangerous thing. It can trick you into reaching for ghosts. But the rational part of me, the instinctual, primal part, knew better. The voice didn't feel human. It felt designed. Like something had sifted through my memories, analyzed them, and chosen the exact voice that would disarm me. Something that understood how to lower my guard, soften my defenses, make me emotionally vulnerable. The whisper 2 nights earlier had been a test. This was strategy. I forced myself to speak, but the words came out trembling. "Who's there?" The silence that followed was crushing, heavy with expectation. It felt like the air was waiting for my reaction, listening for it, savoring it. When no response came, the stillness grew colder, as if disappointment settled around me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was observing me, evaluating me, learning from every tremble in my voice and every frantic movement of my eyes. The emotional manipulation was precise. It didn't choose a terrifying voice, a monstrous growl, or a stranger's tone. No, it chose someone close to me, someone whose voice carried comfort, pain, history, vulnerability. Someone whose name alone could twist my heart in complicated ways. That realization hit me harder than the whisper itself. Whatever was haunting me wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to connect with me, to find a way inside my mind that I wouldn't immediately shut out. I backed out of the kitchen slowly, eyes scanning the room even though I knew I wouldn't see anything. That was the worst part, not seeing. The emptiness was taunting. If something had been standing there, even a monster, it would have been easier to understand, easier to confront. But facing nothing, that was psychological warfare. I went to my room, locked the door, even though locks meant nothing to something capable of speaking inside my mind. My hands shook as I sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry, but my body felt like it wanted to. A numb, tingling sensation crawled through my arms and legs, the adrenaline refusing to settle. And then it hit me, really hit me. This wasn't guesswork, this wasn't random. It had chosen the voice intentionally, which meant it had access to my memories, which meant it knew what that voice meant to me, which meant it knew me far deeper than any ghost or hallucination ever could. And it wasn't done. I could feel that truth like pressure behind my ribs. The demon had learned my name that first night. But now it was learning who I was. I didn't see it the first time. Not clearly. It appeared the way most nightmares begin, quietly, without warning, slipping into the edges of my awareness, like it had always belonged there. After the familiar voice incident in the kitchen, I tried to convince myself I was dealing with some kind of mental exhaustion, some stress-induced hallucination. But deep down, that explanation was becoming harder to believe. Something was watching me. That much I knew. I could feel its curiosity like a weight against my skin. The shadow started showing itself the very next night, though. Showing itself might be the wrong phrase. It didn't step into view or reveal some monstrous form. It simply existed in places it shouldn't. At first it was small things, brief flickers of darkness in the periphery of my vision, shapes that disappeared the second I turned my head. I told myself it was nothing. Tricks of light, fatigue, imagination. But imagination couldn't explain what happened on the fourth night. I was brushing my teeth when I saw it in the bathroom mirror. A tall, unmoving silhouette standing directly behind me. Not close enough to touch me, but close enough that I should have felt its presence physically. My heart vaulted into my throat, so violently I choked on the mint taste of toothpaste. I swung around, but the bathroom was empty. Just my towel hanging limply on the rack, my reflection trembling in the mirror, my breaths fogging the glass. I leaned forward, gripping the sink until my knuckles turned white. The air felt thick, too thick, not like humidity or heat, but like the oxygen had changed texture. I slowly looked back up at the mirror, and for a brief, horrifying second, I swore I saw the outline again. A tall, narrow shadow in the corner, perfectly still, not swaying, not shifting, just standing, waiting. When I turned my head, it vanished. This became the pattern. See it, turn, gone. But the more I saw it, the closer it seemed to get. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Not fully visible, never in the center of my gaze, but lurking just enough for my mind to register its shape. In doorways, at the end of hallways, in the reflection of the TV when it was off. Always the same shape, tall, elongated. A little too thin to be human, but not distorted enough to be obviously unnatural. It hovered in that uncanny, nauseating space where reality and nightmare blur. I began keeping the lights on everywhere, but the shadow didn't care. It stood proudly in the brightest rooms, as if daring the light to challenge it. The brightness only made its edges sharper, more defined. That frightened me more than total darkness ever could. Darkness should conceal things. Light should reveal them. But this shadow didn't follow rules. It existed outside them. I tried to ignore it, but you can't ignore something that insists on being seen. Something that understands the exact distance it needs to maintain, to stay just out of reach, just out of understanding, but never out of sight. It moved with intention, not like a wandering spirit, not like a trick of the light, but like a predator. Patient, calculating, observing. The worst moment came a few days later. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch TV. Though my eyes kept drifting to the darkened reflection on the screen, I wasn't looking for it. I was trying desperately not to. but my gaze locked onto the faint outline anyway. There it was again, standing behind me. Still, too still. The shape didn't flicker or fade. It simply existed, solid and unwavering, like it had always been part of the room. My heart pounded, but I couldn't turn around. I don't know why. Maybe because some primal instinct deep inside me knew that turning around meant acknowledging it. And acknowledging it meant something would change, something irreversible. Then, slowly, so slowly it made my skin crawl, the shadow lifted an arm, not fully, not dramatically, just a slight, deliberate motion. Upward, as if raising a hand to wave or reach or point. I bolted upright, heart slamming against my ribs, and stumbled backward until I hit the opposite wall. The reflection showed nothing now, just the empty room behind me. But I knew it had moved. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't exhaustion. Shadows don't move on their own. I spent the rest of that night wide awake, lights blazing, checking every corner of my home every 10 minutes. But the shadow didn't come out again. Or maybe it did and I simply didn't see it. That's what terrified me most. That it was always there, and I only noticed it when it allowed me to. Because the more it appeared, the more certain I became it wasn't following me. It wasn't haunting the house. It wasn't hiding. It was studying me. The whisper had introduced itself. The familiar voice had tested my emotions. Now the shadow was showing me its form, or at least the part of it I could comprehend without losing my mind. Every instinct told me it was waiting. Waiting for the moment I would finally turn and see it fully. Waiting for the moment I would accept its presence. Waiting for the moment I would no longer be able to pretend it wasn't real. And deep down, I already knew it wouldn't be waiting much longer. Sleep used to be the one place where I could shut out the world. A reset button. A place where the noise of everyday life dissolved, and I could finally breathe. But once the shadow began following me, sleep became something else entirely. It became a battlefield. One where I didn't know the rules and had no chance of winning. The first night it truly began, I remember lying in bed telling myself that I was imagining everything. That shadows couldn't follow someone. That voices from the past didn't whisper your name in empty kitchens. That the numb, tingling dread under my skin was just anxiety. I repeated those lies over and over until my body finally surrendered to exhaustion. I should have known better. I don't know what time I woke up. I just remember jolting from sleep so violently that my whole body felt like it had been thrown upward. My eyes flew open, wide and frantic, scanning the dark room for something I couldn't name. The house was dead quiet. No traffic, no wind, no settling walls. The silence pressed against my eardrums like static. Then I felt it. A cold breath brushing the back of my neck. Slow, deliberate, too close. I didn't move. Couldn't move. The breath continued. Another exhale, light as a whisper. Just enough pressure to raise the tiny hairs on my skin. My mind screamed to turn around, to look, to run, to do something. But my body stayed locked in place. Frozen by a fear so primal it felt older than my own memories. When the breathing stopped, the silence returned. But it wasn't empty anymore. It felt filled, occupied by something unseen but undeniably present. My chest tightened as I slowly reached for the lamp on my nightstand. The moment my fingers touched the switch, the mattress dipped behind me. Not a little. Not the way a restless sleeper shifts their weight. This was a clear, deliberate indentation. The weight of something sitting beside me. My throat went dry. I held my breath, pressing my nails so hard into the lamp switch that the metal bit into my skin. The bed didn't move again, but the pressure stayed. Heavy, cold, utterly still, as if whatever it was had settled comfortably. As if it belonged there. I finally managed to turn on the light. My hand trembled so badly I hit the switch twice. The room flooded with brightness, and the weight vanished instantly. The mattress lifted with a soft exhale of springs, leaving behind a cold indentation that faded right before my eyes. I stayed awake until sunrise, sitting upright in bed with the lamps blazing and my back against the wall. Even then, I didn't feel safe. Morning light didn't comfort me. It only made me dread the next night. And that next night came sooner than I wanted. At exactly 3:11 a.m. I didn't know the time at first. I only knew I was pulled out of sleep by something touching me. A brush against my ankle. Gentle. Testing. Like fingers lightly tracing my skin. I yanked my leg upward so fast my muscles cramped. Sweat rolled down my spine in cold rivulets as I clutched the blanket to my chest. I grabbed my phone to check the time, 3:11 a.m. A perfect, precise moment. The same thing happened the next night. And the night after that, always at 3:11 a.m., never earlier, never later. As if the demon was keeping a schedule, or following one. After a week, I stopped pretending it was coincidence. The touches grew bolder. Sometimes it wasn't my ankle. It was my upper arm, my shoulder, the small of my back. I felt the cold points of pressure, distinct and intentional, like someone pressing fingertips into my skin without leaving a mark. Other times, I heard breathing that didn't belong to me. Not loud, not animalistic, just soft, steady inhales beside me. Too close, too intimate. I didn't dare turn my head. Every instinct told me that seeing whatever lay beside me would break something inside me beyond repair. My exhaustion became visible. Dark circles under my eyes. Slurred thoughts, nerves constantly twitching. I tried staying awake through the night, but the demon didn't need sleep deprivation to find me. It found me even when I was awake. Whispers in the corner of my room. The faint dip of the mattress when I blinked too long. The shifting shadows that lingered at the doorway, like silent observers. The nights stretched on endlessly. Hours felt like days. I started counting down the minutes to 3:11, as if it were some kind of ritual. My body tense and shaking long before the clock turned. That minute felt like a curtain sliding open. A moment the house itself paused. The air thickened. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my teeth. Every night the demon came closer. Every night the touches grew more defined. Every night the silence became heavier, more intelligent. I realized something chilling as the sleepless nights took their toll. The demon wasn't trying to scare me anymore. It was trying to wear me down, to break the barrier between my waking mind and whatever realm it existed in. Fear was no longer its weapon. Fatigue was. Vulnerability was. Isolation was. And each night it succeeded a little more. Sleep wasn't sleep anymore. Night wasn't night. My bed wasn't my bed. Nothing was mine. Everything belonged to the presence waiting for me at 3:11 a.m. It began slowly. So slowly that you didn't even notice the shift at first. The demon did not lunge at you, did not scream, did not drag you into nightmares soaked in blood. No. It chose something far more effective, far more intimate. It began by rearranging the borders of your mind, one quiet inch at a time. A whisper here, a nudge there. A suggestion that felt like your own thought, but carried a weight you didn't recognize. The first crack appeared during an ordinary morning. You were brushing your teeth, half asleep, when you caught your reflection smiling back at you. But you weren't smiling. Your lips were still, your jaw unmoved. The smile in the mirror was faint, almost polite, but unmistakably wrong. You blinked, and your reflection returned to normal, but your heart pounded so loudly you tasted metal. You tried to convince yourself it was exhaustion, stress, imagination. But underneath that thin layer of denial was a growing truth. The demon had stopped haunting the outside world and had begun exploring the inside of your mind. Nights became war zones. You didn't just dream. You fell into landscapes the demon built. Familiar places ruined by details that didn't belong. Your childhood home, but with all the furniture overturned. Your school corridors, but every locker door slowly opening by itself. A beach you once visited, but the waves whispered your name every time they crashed. The demon controlled everything in these dreams, shifting the environment with the casual ease of someone rearranging objects on a shelf. You tried fighting back, tried forcing yourself awake, but every time you struggled, the demon responded with a soft, mocking laugh, your laugh, but distorted, deeper, warped. You woke each morning drenched in sweat, with a soreness in your limbs as if you'd been running for miles. Soon the line between waking and dreaming began to blur. You'd be sitting in your room, fully awake, and suddenly you'd hear the sound of the ocean, faint and far away, or the walls would tilt slightly, as though something behind them had breathed too deeply. Once, when you closed your eyes for only a second, you felt sand beneath your feet. When you opened them again, you were standing on your bedroom floor, trembling, The demon wanted more than fear. It wanted presence. It wanted residence. Your thoughts started slipping. You'd be speaking to someone and forget what you were saying mid-sentence. Not because you lost your train of thought, but because a new thought, sharp, cold, and not yours, cut straight through your mind like a blade. It whispered warnings, taunts, memories you didn't want to recall. Sometimes it spoke your name so clearly that you'd jerk your head to the side, as if someone stood right beside you. It didn't yell, it didn't hiss, it didn't roar, it occupied. The demon began imitating your inner voice. At first, it was subtle. You'd think, I need to go to sleep early, and immediately hear yourself respond, no. Stay awake. I want to show you something. It was terrifying precisely because it sounded like you. Like a darker, more knowing version of your own thoughts. People around you noticed. You became jumpy, distracted, drained. You struggled to follow conversations. Friends asked if you were okay. But how could you tell them the truth? That something was thinking with you, through you, and sometimes instead of you. The loss of control grew more violent. You'd find objects moved around your home with no memory of touching them. A glass shattered in your hand once, but you couldn't remember squeezing it. You found scratches on your arms one morning, as if someone traced lines into your skin while you slept. Then came the moment you feared most. You were walking down the hallway, and for a split second, so quick you questioned if it really happened, your body stopped without your permission. Your legs locked. Your arms went still. Your breath froze halfway in your chest. And you felt something behind your eyes, not touching them but using them, like a puppeteer testing the strings. When you regained control, your whole body felt like ice. That night, the demon spoke to you directly inside your mind. No sound, no echo, just a cold statement delivered with absolute certainty. You don't decide anymore. You wanted to scream, but even your fear felt muted, as though something was filtering your emotions before you could fully feel them. The demon no longer needed shadows or whispers. It had found something far more powerful. Your thoughts, your memories, your dreams. And now it wanted to twist them, reshape them, mold them into something it could use. Your mind was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battleground, and the demon had already claimed a corner of it, building its presence inside your consciousness, brick by brick. The worst part wasn't losing control. It was realizing how easily your mind accepted the invasion. As if some part of you had been waiting for it all along. It didn't announce itself. It didn't knock or scream or make a sound that could be traced. I knew it was coming the moment the air changed. The subtle, almost imperceptible stillness that had preceded every encounter. The house felt smaller, the shadows thicker. Like the walls themselves were leaning in, pressing against me. My heart hammered with a rhythm I could feel in my teeth. I knew I would face it tonight. I had no choice. I tried to prepare. I didn't know how, but I tried. I spoke aloud to myself, practicing courage, rehearsing commands, repeating mantras about strength and protection. None of it mattered. Every syllable felt hollow. I had faced whispers, shadows, cold touches, sleepless nights, and stolen thoughts. But now, it would confront me. And I wasn't sure I was ready. It began with a presence. I could feel it in the room before I saw it. A weight pressing down, heavy and deliberate, like gravity had been altered around me. My breath caught in my chest as the hairs on my arms rose. The silence wasn't empty, it was charged, waiting, watching, anticipating. Then it revealed itself, not fully, not immediately. Shadows gathered in the corner, stretching unnaturally, thickening, twisting. A shape formed, taller than any human, thin, elongated in ways that made my stomach lurch. Its edges shifted like smoke trapped in glass, soft yet sharp, almost tangible. My instincts screamed to run, but my feet were nailed to the floor. And then it spoke. Not a whisper this time, not a mimic of a memory. A voice that resonated deep in my chest, echoing with authority. It said my name. Not softly, not cautiously, but with certainty, with claim. It wasn't testing me anymore. It had learned me. It had entered my mind. It had mapped my fears. And now it was telling me outright it existed. And I could not deny it. I swallowed, trying to steady the tremor in my throat. I wanted to speak, to ask it why, to demand it leave. but the words lodged halfway down my chest. I could only stare, and in the dim, wavering light of the room, I realized it wasn't humanoid, but somehow it was communicating everything I needed to know. Every motion, every distortion of the shadows, every subtle pulse in the air screamed intention. It wanted me to see it, to acknowledge it, to understand it wasn't bound by the same rules I lived by. My logical mind scrambled for explanations, but there were none. No horror movie, no story, no myth I had ever read prepared me for this moment. It wasn't here to scare me in the traditional sense. It was here to show me what it had already done. My thoughts raced. Memories invaded my mind unbidden. The first whisper, the voice in the kitchen, the shadows that had followed me for nights. Every sleepless hour, every stolen moment of peace, every brush against my skin, all of it converged in this confrontation. I was living the timeline it had been orchestrating from the start. Every step, every breath, every flicker of fear had led to this. I felt a pull, subtle but undeniable, as if my consciousness itself was being tugged toward it, not by physical force, but by attention, focus, energy. It wasn't about my body. It was about my awareness, my mind, my soul. It wanted more than my fear. It wanted my presence, my recognition, my submission, even if I refused to give it verbally. I forced myself to speak, the words trembling. "What do you want?" The air shifted. The shadows thinned slightly, coiling around themselves, and then it spoke, not in words I could hear, but in ideas, in emotions, in impressions. It didn't demand my soul. It didn't need to. It wanted my energy, my acknowledgement, my engagement. Every interaction I'd had with it, every terror it had sown, had been a lesson in focus and compliance. It had been training me to see it. I stumbled backward, hands pressed against the walls, every instinct screaming to flee. But fleeing felt pointless. I couldn't outrun it. Not in this house, not in this mind, not anywhere. I realized then that confrontation wasn't about fighting it, not physically, not mentally. Confrontation was about recognition, acknowledging the truth that it was more than shadow, more than voice, more than nightmare. It was intimate, invasive, patient, and eternal. I tried to resist. I closed my eyes, willed my mind to empty itself of fear, to retreat into safety. But even behind my eyelids, I felt its presence looming, patient, understanding every fear, every secret, every heartbeat. It wasn't angry. It wasn't vindictive. It was deliberate, calculated, controlled. And then I understood something terrifying. It had already won. Not in a scream, not in a visible attack, not in the destruction of my home. It had won in the quiet, subtle way demons win. By shaping my mind, stretching my awareness, teaching me that some presences could never be denied, never be escaped, never be ignored. The confrontation was a lesson, a declaration, a final instruction. It existed. It had learned me, and nothing would change that. I opened my eyes. The shadows receded slightly, but the weight remained. Its voice lingered inside my head, its name and my own name intertwined in an impossible, intimate rhythm. I wasn't broken. Not yet. But I understood something I could never unlearn. Some forces don't need to destroy to claim victory. They simply need to exist, and you must acknowledge them. Even after everything I endured, every whisper, every shadow, every moment when my own mind felt borrowed, the true horror didn't reveal itself until much later. Because hauntings don't always end in screams, or scratches, or confrontations with figures made of darkness. Sometimes they end in silence, in distance, in the quiet belief that you have escaped. For a long time I truly thought I had. I moved. I left the house where it first spoke my name. I threw out the clothes I wore during those sleepless nights. I changed my routines, my habits, even the places I visited. I rebuilt myself from the ground up, piece by piece, determined to shed every memory that demon had touched. At first, it worked. Or at least, it felt like it did. I slept through entire nights again. I felt sunlight on my skin without bracing for a shadow behind me. I heard ordinary sounds, cars, footsteps, the air conditioning turning on, and they didn't disguise themselves as whispers. For the first time in months, my heartbeat felt like my own. My mind felt like it belonged to me. I began to believe the nightmare had ended. That by leaving the place where it started, I left it behind. That demons, like people, were bound to geography, to the places they chose to nest. I convinced myself I had outrun it. But demons don't chase the way humans do. They linger, they wait, they remember. The first sign returned in the smallest way, a dream. Not frightening, not violent, just familiar, too familiar. I dreamt of a hallway I hadn't seen since that night of confrontation. The same dim light, the same stretched shadows, the same heavy, breathless stillness pressing against the walls. When I woke, my pillow was damp, and I couldn't remember whether I had been sweating or crying. I brushed it off. One dream meant nothing. I was adjusting, healing. And then, a week later, I heard something that froze my bones. I was in my new apartment, bright, modern, filled with noise from the street outside. I was cooking, the fan humming above me, my phone playing music. Normal things, safe things. I dropped a spoon on the floor, bent to pick it up, and then I heard it, a voice, distant but unmistakable, drifting through the room like it had been waiting just behind the walls. It said my name, softly, calmly, almost lovingly, exactly the way it used to. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped, searching the corners, the hallway, the doorway. But nothing moved. Nothing shifted. The apartment was empty. Yet I knew in my core it wasn't my imagination. You don't forget a voice that doesn't come from the world outside, but from somewhere deeper. Somewhere behind sound. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, because of recognition. The demon hadn't followed my body. It had stayed with my name, and my name lives wherever I do. In the days that followed, the signs grew bolder. A shadow that didn't belong to anything in the room flickered at the edge of my vision. A familiar smell, cold, metallic, like old stone, filled my living room for a few seconds before fading. Once, when I looked into the bathroom mirror, I saw a second silhouette behind me, tall and thin, but gone the moment I blinked. I kept telling myself it was stress, memory, trauma echoing through my senses. But deep inside, I felt the same presence I had felt back then. The weight in the air, the stillness, the wrongness. And I realized something I had refused to understand earlier. The demon never wanted the place where I lived. It wanted the place I thought. My mind, my awareness, my attention, my name. When a demon learns your name, it doesn't give it back. That's the part no story tells you. The part no exorcism, no ritual, no holy verse warns about. When something dark ties itself to your identity, the bond doesn't break with distance. It only sleeps. I tried resisting it again. I kept lights on all night. I burned cleansing herbs until my apartment smelled like a forest fire. I whispered prayers I barely remembered from childhood. But none of it mattered. Not because the rituals were wrong, but because I already understood the truth. I wasn't being haunted physically. I was being remembered. And then the final confirmation came. It was 3 in the morning. Of course it was. I woke to silence. Not ordinary silence, but the thick, heavy kind I had learned to fear. The kind that feels like everything in the world is holding its breath. My bedroom felt colder than the rest of the apartment, like the air had been drained of warmth. I sat up slowly, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. Then, from the darkest corner of the room, not a whisper, not a growl, but a steady, impossibly calm voice. I heard it again. I never left. My blood froze. My throat closed. I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my chest. The darkness in the corner didn't move. It didn't shift or take shape or crawl toward me. It didn't need to. The presence alone filled the room like a second atmosphere. And then, in a voice that echoed not in my ears but in the deepest part of my mind, the place only it had ever reached, it spoke my name. Slowly, perfectly, like a memory it had shaped itself around. That's when I understood the final truth. You can leave a house. You can leave a town. You can leave a chapter of your life behind. But when a demon learns your name, you never leave its story. Its voice still echoes where my thoughts should be. And every night, right before sleep pulls me under, I hear it breathing softly in the dark, waiting for me to say its name back.